Hi, folks. Thanks so much for joining us today for the next edition of Music Biz's Common Ground webinar series. My name is Henrik Bick. I'm with the Music Biz team here. Glad to welcome you to today's webinar. Before we introduce today's presenter, I just have a couple of quick housekeeping notes for you. First and foremost, some notes about today's session. In order to make the most of today's webinar, be sure to check your Zoom chat settings. This will ensure that you're able to network and keep in the conversation with everyone today. When you use your chat bar, please be sure to change your settings to everyone so that way everybody in the audience can see your messages as well as our presenters today. We'll be taking questions at the end of today's webinar. The best way to make sure that our presenters are seeing the questions is to drop them in the dedicated Q&A box. To do that, there's a Q&A button on your Zoom dashboard. You'll click that. The Q&A sidebar will pop up and you can submit questions via chat that way. Reminder that this webinar is being recorded and will be hosted on Music Biz's website by end of day today. You can access it a couple of ways. You can visit musicbiz.org, navigate to the events section and click event recording archive, or go to the educate section on musicbiz.org and visit our Common Ground webinar series page. We'll post those links in chat so that way you have access to them before you log off today. Outside of today's webinar, I have a couple of upcoming event notes for you. First and foremost is our deadline for the call for presentations for Music Biz 2026 is fast approaching. Hard to believe, but Monday will be 1 month out from when the call for presentations closes. So if you've got an idea for a panel discussion that will help to inform the global music industry at our event next May, that's May 11th through the 14th at the Renaissance Atlanta Waverly, be sure to submit that via our call for presentations within the next month. Also coming up is our deadline to nominate for one of our 9 crowdsourced Busy Awards. So the Busy Awards is returning for its 5th edition in 2026. We're super excited to be hosting the Busies again. And we've got a couple of new awards this year. One is the Digital Innovator Award, which will highlight somebody who is advancing music technology in a way that's growing the entire business and making it easier for us all to work together. The other is our ACE Communicator Award, recognizing those folks who work in non-marketing communications, both internal and external comms, public relations, things like that. So be sure to visit musicbiz2026.com for access to our call for presentation submissions, as well as our Busy Award nominations. And also, while you're there, be sure to start planning your trip to Atlanta next May. Registration, hotel bookings are all open now, and hotels book up very quickly. In some years, we've had them book the year before the conference. So if you're keen on joining us in May, be sure to start making your plans now. A little bit sooner than that, next Tuesday will be our next free event in the Music Biz Passport series, which covers global markets around the world. Our next session on Tuesday will focus on the Chinese music market, dispel some rumors about how the Chinese market works and help you to maximize your footprint in China. Visit musicbiz.org and click on the passport button to access the registration for that event, as well as recordings of our past passport events as well. And while you're at musicbiz.org, don't forget to check out our remaining Common Ground webinar series lineup for 2025. We've got about 3-4 more sessions before the end of the year, including one next Thursday hosted by Symphonic Distribution. You'll also be able to access recordings from our past webinars. And like I said, by end of day today, today's session recording will also be available via that website. You'll also see our latest episode of the Future of What podcast and our other thought leadership content while at the website, and information on our first in-person event for 2026, our Trust and Safety and Music Symposium on January 12th at NYU. But let's move on from future events and get back to today's event. We're really excited to have the Qobuz team here to talk to us today. And to kick things off, please welcome Rachel Silton of the Qobuz team. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Henrik, and thank you, Music Biz, for having us today, and thank you to you all for joining us. So before we get started, for those of you who aren't familiar with Qobuz, just want to give a little bit of context behind today and tell you a little bit about Qobuz. We're going to start with a conversation. I'll go over a brief presentation at the end, and then we will open it up to questions. So please do put your questions in the chat. We want your questions. And yeah, just to give a quick overview of Qobuz, we're an independently owned high quality music platform. So we have streaming subscriptions as well as a download store. And we take a very unique approach to streaming. We like to think of ourselves as the digital version of a record shop, naturally driving attention to artists outside of the mainstream, as the, theme of our conversation today will center around. We've historically been known for our high-res audio quality, which we still have. We have no MP3s, start at CD quality and go all the way up to 24-bit high res. We have an online magazine with editorial content, emphasis on human curation. And this past year, we were the first and only streaming platform to publicly publish our pay-per-stream rate, which on average is about 4 to 5 times the industry average. We also have no free subscriptions, only paid subscriptions, and the download store for those who want to own their music. So we'll get more into Qobuz later on, but for now, I would love to introduce the others that we have here with us today. So I will start with Sarah Dempsey. Sarah is head of sales for North America at Warp Records. She oversees streaming and retail strategy across the label's roster. With a background in sales and marketing across independent music, she focuses on long-term artist development, building fan engagement, revenue growth, and lasting cultural impact beyond the mainstream. Before Warp, Sarah most recently worked at Partisan Records, and throughout her career, she's worked across both major and indie labels with artists as diverse as Lady Gaga, Robin, PJ Harvey, Aphex Twin, Fontaines DC, Geese, Broadcast, and Stereo Lab, among others. Also joining us today, we have Dan Cohen. Dan has been a multi-decade fixture of the music industry, working not only at independent or independent adjacent labels like None Such, Astral Works, and V2, but also at major labels where he has focused on the careers of more esoteric artists who found themselves on major labels like LCD Sound System, The Decemberists, and Massive Attack. Most recently, Dan was the SVP of Marketing, Sales, and Promotions at Nonesuch, where he oversaw campaigns including Molly Tuttle, Robert Plant, Cecile McLaurin-Salvant, Brad Maldo, Rhiannon Giddens, Steve Reich, and countless others. And over the course of his career, he's led marketing campaigns for artists including Lorde, Gorillaz, The Decemberists, Air, The Beastie Boys, and many more. So needless to say, Sarah and Dan have quite a lot of great experience to share with us today. Thank you for being here with me, Sarah and Dan. So to get started, the theme of this panel is all about marketing outside of the mainstream. So marketing to intentional listeners who want a more unique experience, a more engaging experience. That definitely guides a lot of the work that we do at Qobuz, and I know it guides a lot of the work that Sarah and Dan do and have done. So just to get started, what does it mean to be non-mainstream, and what are some of the challenges faced when marketing in a less traditional way or to niche audiences? Uh, Dan, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be here. Yeah, so non-mainstream, at least in kind of the guise of, let's say, Nonesuch, it's focusing on genres that don't necessarily fall into huge radio play or a lot of even big streaming editorial. It's a more of a niche audience. It's a very select group of people. I mean, you reference indie record stores, and it's that type of consumer. It's the ones that are more engaged with an album rather than a track. And our challenges are always fighting against the huge budgets of big mainstream artists. Most of our artists, our budgets are very small. Many of them are, if you've got a classical composer, they're really they're talking about, the album is released 2 years after they've actually performed the piece that they've worked on. So they're not always touring or doing things in conjunction with the album that we would be releasing. And there's just the overall challenges of a smaller media landscape. So fighting against a lot of those things. But again, it's also doing it for great music, great artists, and kind of partnering with great people.
Yeah, Sarah, do you want to add on any of that?
Yeah, well, I appreciate being here too. So thank you for having me. And also, I agree with what you've mentioned, Dan. I was trying to think of it, it's supposed to both a challenge and an opportunity being beyond the mainstream. And that, I think it's just a point of difference and differentiation in terms of like the listeners and fans who might be seeking something different, something beyond what they would encounter maybe in some like lean back spaces. It can mean something niche. It can also just be fans who want a really unique perspective, um, different commercial and artistic goals. Yeah, I know at Warp we really pride ourselves on operating in new spaces in new ways, doing things differently, which I know a lot of places do. But I think our artists also um, really interested in innovation as well, and sort of breaking the rules in creative and interesting ways.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, I mean, there's so many people say that they do things differently, or companies say that. And I think it's also important for us to not do things differently just to be different, but to do things differently with a real purpose behind it. Um, and of course, even in marketing outside the mainstream, we're still going to turn to traditional media like print and TV and radio sometimes, although I know maybe not as much as in the past. But yeah, for you, Dan, how does traditional media fit into all of this?
I mean, press for the artists that None Such works with is essential. It tells the story of the artists, of their albums that they've created. So many of the artists that we work with do have a focus on a kind of a concept behind their album, or it's something that there needs to be a story to be told. So um, many of them are engaged and they'll talk about something online in terms of like they'll do a blog post or a Substack post or something like that. But media press is still the biggest way to get to a larger audience, so that you're not just solely relying on the artist's socials or website or None Touch's mailing list or socials, etc. But it's really it's part of the whole overall story of just of the overall piece of telling the whole story of an album, of a career, of what the artist is trying to accomplish. Radio less so, for most of the artists that None Such works with. It's even the formats that do support what None Such does. The audience is small, it's less engaged, but it's still, again, it's another part of the whole puzzle.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And for you, Sarah?
I mean, traditional media is still very important. It's hard to discount it. It's, finding places that have, and or in like national outlets. It's hard to downplay the impact of, say, no, I don't know, New York Times, or if you got an SNL performance. Obviously, the artists that I work with don't fit in a lot of those spaces. It doesn't really make sense for them, and it doesn't really make sense for those spaces. A lot of the artists I work with also um, don't always do traditional media in the traditional way, or they're not interested in doing a ton of interviews. What they really want, and I think what I was thinking about and thinking about this question and thinking about beyond the mainstream, is depth. So they want places that are going to go deep and tell their story. So there are certain places where that can fit, and certain artists feel that in different spaces. But also looking for, are there new spaces that can offer that depth? Are there new magazine outlets? Is it internet radio? Um, you know, it doesn't have to be traditional media anymore. I think moving beyond that can be exciting, and be an opportunity.
Yeah, and are there any of, you mentioned new spaces. Are there any spaces, communities, platforms that you found to be particularly helpful for your artists for campaigns you've worked on?
So it's no one individual space. I think it's many different spaces across many different artists, but definitely places like NTS, definitely outlets like The Wire or The Quietus, places like Qobuz. Like I think places that are really going to offer in-depth and thoughtful interviews, reviews, and just spend the time really understanding the artist's vision and perspective, and where the artist also feels comfortable sharing that.
Yeah, how about for you, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, one mainstream outlet that, at least with the None Such Artist, that was incredibly impactful was CBS Saturday Morning. Because it's ironically, while it's a huge audience, it's an audience that's not necessarily aware of the artist there. So I think that when they see a bluegrass artist or an Americana artist or a jazz artist where they wouldn't see that anywhere else, it really makes a difference. And people really react. But a lot of times, all of our artists still always want to be on NPR Tiny Desk, and it is great. And it gives them the opportunity to do these long performances and these great interviews and things like that. But, um, you know, it's just it's another space where they're competing against the most mainstream acts again. And the impact of it isn't quite as much as it used to be, except for, as Sarah said, it's an opportunity to tell a story a little bit more and get a little deeper. Podcasts have definitely proven to be really, really important. Again, it's just giving a person an opportunity to tell who the story of who they are, or what the album is. I mean, I think one of the similarities between Warp and None Such is that, the artists just they create works of art. They're not focused on creating just something that is a temporary thing that is a flash in the pan. It's something that 20, 30 years down the road, people will still be coming to, a lot more than something that's just based on a single song.
Yeah, that makes me think a bit about how at Qobuz, a lot of our listeners, they want to listen to full albums all the way through rather than listening to singles or playlists. There are playlists and that's always an option, but it's really people that listen to a full album. And I think for both of you, you work with a lot of artists that are, like you said, are creating these works of art that are, that's the intention is for them often to be listened to as a whole because all of the songs work together. So it's interesting to find places where people can still do that because it's becoming less and less of a thing that people sit down with a record and listen to it in its entirety. Um, on that note, we're talking about alternative spaces. There's also a lot of online communities, like Reddit. At Qobuz, we have Qobuz Club. I think for me, I come at it with this angle is we have a lot of audio files and music nerds, and in terms of our marketing strategy, we're not going to go after mainstream audiences. We know there's a lot of people that aren't going to understand what we're about, but we're trying to find those specific audiences that will get it and that will understand it and will be interested. So yeah, curious in terms of community building or niche communities, if either of you have had success anywhere in particular.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. I mean, I didn't have an exact answer in terms of success. I think Warp really looks to encourage those online communities to have the discussion, and I think there's a way of releasing music that's incredibly intentional, and all of our artists are so intentional with everything they do. And sometimes there's a bit of mystery involved, a bit of play. And I think that really encourages online communities to delve deep. There's lots of like hints and clues, and what does this mean? And sort of putting the pieces of the puzzle together. I think many of the artists I work with don't really participate in the online communities themselves. They aren't, on the Discord or in the Reddit. They're not necessarily doing the AMAs. Some of them might, but I think that there is a way that the marketing plans and the intentionality and the music itself and the vision behind it really encourages those fan communities in and of themselves. So those fan communities kind of take on a life of their own. And that can be on Reddit, that can be in places like Discord. Yeah, I feel like there's individual websites sometimes that are like fan communities that are really great. So, I mean, I embrace all of that. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, for the non-such acts, less so, I think. We do have, we did have some that are a little more willing to get online, get engaged, and things like that. Um, being able to work with Qobuz and do interviews and tell stories and things like that it's important. Bandcamp listening parties were so always every time that I had an artist do that, I was always really amazed by the interaction, and it wasn't always interaction of the fans to the artist. It was interaction between the fans themselves. Like they'd be talking about gear or they'd be talking about different things. And I think those are the places where a community is built up. And Rachel, to your point about the Qobuz community as well, I think these are people who come to it based on an artist or something like that, but also it's a place where they can talk, and they can kind of talk about gear. They can talk about whatever it is that a concert that they saw or something like that, which is really amazing. And I know, like, when artists have been involved in things like that, I think that they're taken aback by, and really inspired, I think, by seeing the interactivity between fans with each other, which I think, everyone always thinks that's with just young kids and stuff doing that, or teenagers, and it's very often it's not. It's I think a lot of older fans or that are just excited to kind of be able to find people with similar kind of likes.
Yeah, totally. It made me start thinking about chat rooms and all of the different, yeah, strange places that have existed throughout the years. Strange, but also great. And on the topic of artists and, some artists not engaging online, of course, there's also social media, which, at this point I mean, it's mainstream. It's, everyone's on social media. And I know that when working with a lot of artists, there's artists that they get social media, they're on it, they're into it, and then there's artists that it's not really their thing. And that applies to streaming too. There's artists that, have their own thoughts about they don't really want to put their music on a streaming platform. I encountered that when working at an indie jazz label in my past. So, curious to hear your approach in terms of when working with artists that, are reluctant to be on social media or to be on streaming platforms. How do you strike the balance of honoring them and their preferences, and but also kind of encouraging and pushing them to make sure that that they're out there engaging with people and letting their art be known? Whoever
Sarah, I'm
wants.
gonna Sarah, I'm gonna let you take this one first because I think that you've got very unique artists in this in this situation.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I hope I'll do it justice. Well, I was going to say that over the course of my career, but definitely at Warp, um, I've always been interested in helping artists build livelihoods and build long-term careers for them to build fan bases. Um, it's continually having the conversation about what they're comfortable with and where they feel like their music should and can exist. I really understand hesitations as far as social media. I think social media is really tough. I think it might be toxic for all of us. I feel like we should all try to find limits and safe ways of using it. I don't know exactly what that means. It might be different for everybody. I'm also really protective of the artist's mental health and making sure that they're taking care of themselves. Social media can be so vulnerable and toxic. People can be really sort of terrible in the comments too and say things that they would never say to an artist's face. Um, I feel like some artists can really, again, play on social media or use it in a way where it feels less vulnerable, less putting, themselves out there. And I appreciate and applaud that. Um, so as far as social media, I think we tread carefully. There's obviously value in it because it's a way to speak directly to fans. It's a way to let fans know that the music is out there. Um, I think it doesn't have to be social media. It could be your newsletter. It could be other avenues, but finding ways to speak to the fan is very, very important. It's obviously a really competitive and crowded landscape. So where can or should you do that? As far as streaming, I do really believe in streaming. That is something, I worked on the digital side for a very long time. I think that streaming is amazing. I was thinking about, chat rooms. I feel like in the early days of like beginning my music fandom, you had to really hunt to find music. And now there's so much music to be discovered and enjoyed. I think it's a wonderful thing. So I really believe in streaming as an opportunity to get in front of more people. And you don't have to put your entire catalog on streaming. You don't have to lean in a crazy way, but it is a way to allow more people to discover an artist's music. So yeah, I'm always willing to have that conversation with an artist. And definitely at Warp, we're never going to force an artist to do something that they don't want to do. But I think it's being willing to have the conversation about their comfort level, about what makes sense for them, and return to it over time.
Yeah, I love everything you said.
It's funny because I always thought that None Such had artists that were not always the most excited to be on social media, but I realized in the various conversations I've heard Sarah discuss some of her artists. I feel pretty lucky that I think some of our artists were, you know, even on the simplest thing, like we were almost always able to get an artist to on release date, if they weren't going to do an unboxing video, do just a photo holding up their album. Was normally if we could get one thing, and then a post saying, stream our album now and sending them to a Qobuz or the like. Um, a lot of the artists that None Such works with are older. They're not social media savvy at all. And so a lot of the work would fall on Greg, who runs None Such's socials and website, and he would do the messaging in a way that felt okay and not overly selly, but it wasn't overly personal either. There was occasional artists that were very good at social media and really liked it and engaged with it. But just I agree with what Sarah said. I mean, I think artists are asked to do a lot. It's not just create art and then create a live show and then potentially talk about it to the press and tour and do all of these things, and then you're asking them to go on 15 different social media platforms and create playlists and this and that. It's like it's a lot, and so it's picking and choosing the things that they're the most comfortable with and having those discussions, and some of it hopefully is the stuff that's going to be impactful but not always will be. um as far as streaming, I agree with what Sarah said. I mean, I think it's great. We always want our artists to have their music up on streaming services. If there are certain ones that they were averse to having their music on, we were definitely supportive of that. None Such was also in a unique situation that it's part of a large company, so there were certain times that we had to make a lot of requests very high up a chain to kind of get that done because and they but we were always able to and those were rare occasions, but they were occasions. And our thing was great. If you don't want to be on that site, that's fine. Let's really focus on the ones that you are and the ones that you feel excited about. And I think that there are advantages, I guess, when an artist says, well, we don't want to be on certain DSPs, but then it's like, okay, great, then let's pay attention where they are.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to authenticity, like really respecting the artist's vision, both in terms of the music, but also in terms of how they're going to promote it, where they're going to put it, how they're going to speak to their audience. And then of course, yes, streaming's everywhere, but there are still other ways to listen to music. There's still physical, there's still digital downloads. I have to say, when I first joined Qobuz and heard about the download store, I thought to myself, what? Downloads? Who is downloading music? And it turns out there's a lot of people that are downloading music, and of course we know that supports artists in an even better way. So yeah, curious to hear from you both on your thoughts on, where these other avenues of purchasing music, listening to music fall in, alongside streaming.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The download stuff has always been exciting to me, that it's like, wow, it does still exist. And we see that when we do, like, you guys, Koba is amazing about doing download sales. And not just focusing on new things, but like, hey, let's focus on some catalog stuff. And it's a great way to reintroduce people to older albums, which is always a really fantastic thing for us. And was always pleasantly surprised to see the results of it. Um, I was shocked, bringing up Bandcamp again, that pretty much every album was about 50% downloads, which was incredible. So obviously there is still a market, and I think it goes back to, again, people wanting to hear whole albums. And, for us, physical, it was huge. We didn't release an album unless it was coming out on physically as well, and almost always was day and date. Being part of a larger company, listening to struggles that they would have of, you know, trying to convince an artist to release an album physically, or to try to get it within 6 months of when an album was up on streaming platforms. We never had that. We were always putting things out, that our street dates were set when we knew that we could have it physically in stores. And we have been lucky enough to have a really good group of core indie stores. I mean, that were fans of what we did, and were supportive, and had a community that cared about what we were doing. Yeah.
I have a few points to add in that. Well, as you were speaking, Dan, I was thinking about, I think it's like a traditional digital advertising idea of like the funnel. And I was thinking almost of like streaming as the broadest point, but giving people choices along the way. And I think that consumers and listeners and fans are starting to understand that if they really want to support an artist, there are additional steps they can take. And knowing that streaming is great, but download is better. Buy the album, that's great too. Go to the show. And I think I really believe, and the label I work at really believes in giving consumers lots of different choices, lots of different ways to support. And I think it's interesting that I think fans are also looking for new ways and different things to do. I think that there is an interest in maybe being less online in ways, or finding different ways to do it. And also understanding that streaming has its limitations in terms of like an ownership model, right? Streaming is wonderful, but things can disappear from streaming. People can pull their catalogs. It doesn't go on forever. So owning something, the real value in owning something, or the value in owning something that you can listen to walking down the street without being online. Like, I love that people are buying tape decks. I love that people are collecting CDs again. Like, I think there is something really magical in being like owning something physical. I see all of these things sort of working in tandem too. And I love indie record stores as well. I like Bandcamp listening parties. And I was thinking about the experience of being in an indie record store when someone's playing a record you love and being able to talk about it as like the offline version of a Bandcamp listening, and trying to find ways to encourage that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point about choices, having choices available. And I think it's also interesting. It's important to keep in mind that it's not, these things aren't all exclusive of each other. It's not like someone streams or downloads or buys vinyl or, people, most of the people on Qobuz, are vinyl collectors. And we even, this really wasn't supposed to be a Qobuz plug, but we even have a subscription where you can stream and also get discounts in the download store, which goes to show, there's a lot of people, there's so many audiophiles that like to have their own music collection and move it around and do different things to it. And then they'll also stream for the convenience of it. So yeah, it's nice to see that, I think in some ways there's starting to be even more interest on ways to listen to music outside of streaming. So I'm thinking that I might take this opportunity to go through some slides on Qobuz. I know Dan Makta was supposed to help us present these slides, but I don't know if Dan Makta is still here. But thank you, Sarah and Dan. This conversation has been really great.
I just want to
Okay.
say real quickly, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Sarah and Dan, for spending time with us today and talking through this really important topic. I'm one of those music consumers that fits into all of the buckets you're talking about. I will stream music for discovery. I will, hand a band member cash at a show to buy a CD to take home with me. A vinyl for an album I really love. So it's exciting to talk through all these different consumption models and how we can really evolve our industry with them going forward.
Great. It looks like Dan is back. We're gonna continue the conversation a bit. I'm just gonna go through a few slides, just to go a little bit deeper into Qobuz and how it fits into some of the topics we've been talking about, and talk with Sarah and Dan a bit more on how we've been able to work together before we open it up for questions. So can we get those slides up?
Yes. Uh,
I guess,
Covering.
you know what, I'll take this. I think I actually might have forgotten to introduce myself, and I can introduce Dan too. If I didn't mention it, I'm the Director of Marketing and Acquisition for all of Qobuz's English-speaking territories. So that's the US, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and also the Nordics, which, technically not English-speaking, but the Qobuz app is in English there. Dan, do you want to introduce yourself too?
Yeah, I'm Dan Makta, Managing Director of Qobuz in the same territories. And I'm off camera, but I'm running the slides.
Great. So just to do a quick overview, let's go to the first slide. So yeah, I know we've said it already, but I just want to make sure everyone's fully clear how you pronounce Qobuz, because it's a weird name. I understand we get so many different things. We get Qobuz, Qobuz. We also Qbuzz is one we hear a lot, but it's Qobuz, just to clear up any confusion. And just to give you a sense of, how we're different from other streaming platforms. So these are our top genres. Rock is first, jazz is second, classical is third, then pop, electronic. Of course, we offer all genres of music, but it gives you a sense of our audience and their listening habits. And then in terms of territories, US is number one. We're a French company, so France is number two, then Germany, the UK, and Japan, where we recently launched and are very quickly growing our audience. And in terms of best practices for working with us, like I mentioned, we don't have MP3s. We start at CD quality and go up to 24/192 high res. So always, deliver music in the highest possible audio quality. Send us digital booklets. Our listeners love digital booklets and liner notes and all the context behind the music. So that's really important for us. You would be surprised how important it is, how meaningful it is to us for you to include us in your smart links. And maybe closer to the top of the smart links would be great. And if you ever have questions about where to find our links for streaming, download, just definitely reach out. On social media, we're Qobuz, so tag us where it makes sense. And then, of course, keep us posted, brief us on all priorities, upcoming releases with all the associated details. Yes, like I mentioned, streaming links, download links, just reach out if there's any questions on that. And I've talked about how Qobuz is unique, how we present music differently, and how we're able to reach this more niche audience that wants to have more context behind the music, that wants to really dive deeper. So this just gives some examples. We have Qobuz Isim, even harder to pronounce than Qobuz, is an award that our team gives to our favorite emerging artists, usually an artist's first album. Press accolades will highlight albums that have received awards from music publications. We have an album of the week, which differs across territories, but a weekly standout release. And then we're always also highlighting older albums, historic albums. And so the Qobuz Essential Discography is a way that we do that. Editorial and interviews. We have Qobuz Magazine. It's right there on the app. We'll do artist interviews there. There's album reviews. We have a team of freelance writers and also in-house writers that are constantly reviewing albums, doing deeper dives into labels, artists, genres, music history. And then artist influence playlists. So we'll do, this is a way we can also highlight artistry. We'll do listening with playlists. This example with Cecile McLaurin Savant, where artists will create playlists about what they're listening to, which, I think a lot of people are interested in hearing. We'll also do annotated playlists where artists will provide some notes and more context behind the music that they're choosing. We have this produced by playlist by Kate LeBon. And then the download store. We've talked about downloads. Anyone can access our download store. It's not just limited to Qobuz subscribers. And we have that also from CD quality up to high res. Of course, it's great for artists. And, we work with a lot of labels and distributors on sales in the download store. We love to work creatively, with artists, with our label partners. We're a small team. It's not like we have, a specific one sheet of exactly how we work with partners. We often come up with creative ideas. We've done exclusive releases. There's opportunities for artist curation. We've had artists write articles that are included in Qobuz Magazine, video liners, video interviews. We partner with a lot of music events and festivals, download store sales and spotlights, newsletters, and push notifications. I'm actually going to pause on this slide because I think this is the last one, and would love to just open it up to Sarah and Dan if you wanted to just share some examples of, the types of ways that you've been able to work with us on marketing, where you've seen success.
Yeah, I mean, the big one that we've done together, it's actually a partnership that Qobuz set up with International Anthem, the amazing Chicago-based label, that we work also with on a bunch of releases. And so we've done live events at Public Records in New York, that have then, that have been recorded and turned into an EP. It's a really great partnership. It kind of touches on what Sarah keeps bringing up, like all the various touch points of an artist, like the live show, the selling a special item, creating a special limited edition tour poster, all of those various touch points along the way that yeah, it can all interact. That it doesn't have to be, someone doesn't just have to stream. They can do all the different things, which has been great. We've done, again, I've mentioned the catalog sales that we've done. We did a label sampler at one point with Qobuz. We always like to include Qobuz in our link fires, as you brought up, and Qobuz is great about like providing assets to us. Like if we have an album that is a featured album of the week, we get the assets before release date, so that way the artist has everything that they need. They just post it on socials, and it's a great way for people to have something that is branded properly, but that also they can click on it and then read more about the album, which is a really great opportunity. So it's been a wonderful partnership for Nonesuch.
Thank you, Dan. It's been wonderful for us too. And it's also, you mentioned the exclusive releases with International Anthem, and it's also great for us to be able to, our subscribers love that. We love to be able to offer music that they can't get elsewhere, that has a special story behind it, that's in that high quality. So for us too, we just love working creatively. Sarah, do you want to share?
I mean, as Dan mentioned, I mean, Qobuz has been a tremendous and wonderful partner to Warp, and many of our artists were featured in those slides that you showed, including Nala Sinefro, who won the award that you pointed out is hard to pronounce.
The Qobuz theme, yes.
Yes. I think that there is more that we can do together, and I'm excited. I've been excited always to chat with the Qobuz team. They're incredibly supportive. They come out to our events. They are always like giving us feedback. I think it's just such a great engaged platform and team. Yeah, there's only more that we're going to do together. So I know been incredibly supportive of Nala Sinefro and Stereolab, the new Stereolab record, but also things like we have Canadian artist Joseph Kamaru, who is on one of our imprints that you guys pick for editors picks. So I really appreciate again the depth that you guys go into, and in terms of your support, definitely support artists that are not getting the spotlight elsewhere and really deserve it and make really wonderful, beautiful things.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And I know our team too, we love working with you guys too. So it's definitely mutual. And thanks for sharing those examples. I'm hoping that that's helpful for people that have tuned in and are curious about opportunities. So yes, thank you again to Sarah and Dan for joining us for this discussion. And thank you to Henrik and Elena and the whole Music Biz team. Would love to open up to questions. Do we have questions?
We do. And again, just from the music biz side, I want to thank everybody. Dan and Rachel at Qobuz, Sarah, Dan, thank you all so much for joining us and sharing your time and your expertise with us today. Really appreciate it. A couple of questions regarding Qobuz and Africa. One is, will Qobuz be available in South Africa or Africa? Are there plans for that? And then the other would be on the partnership side, do you all currently work with labels that are based in Africa?
It's a good question. I mean, we're constantly expanding. I really truly don't know exactly, on a timeline when our plans are for expanding to Africa, but our goal is to slowly expand, throughout the world, as much as we can. We try to grow, we grow a bit slowly but stably, and yeah, that's all I can really offer on that subject. Labels in Africa is a good question too. I don't know if the question is, labels that are only based in Africa, or a lot of labels have offices throughout the world. So I don't know if there's a specific label in mind, or feel free to provide more context on that. But unfortunately, I don't have.
I mean, if you're an African label and you want your music on Qobuz, we get it through music through all of the independent aggregators and distributors. So, Qobuz is an option just like the mainstream services. for global distribution. Because our service is not available in Africa yet, if you're only releasing music in Africa, we're not going to be able to work together right now.
Thanks to you both for that. For folks who had questions about working with Qobuz, we'll be sure to connect you all with the Qobuz team to learn some more information. We had another question about tools available for labels. We'll be sure to connect you with the Qobuz team to learn more about that. Next question is directed to Sarah, but we'd love to get everybody's perspective on it if we can. With your expertise in streaming, have you found that artists who are more successful in physical sales or e-commerce, whether that's band merch or physical media, are eventually able to transition their fans into streaming and social active fans? Or are those two groups of fans inherently different?
That's a great question. I mean, there are different demographics in fan bases that are online or offline, or I mean, I hesitate to point it out, but there might be different people who are hanging out at the local record store versus who are streaming music. But I think that those things are diversifying. I think one of the things that you can primarily let people know, that there are other ways that people can explore and find your music. So if you are an artist and you've had a lot of success in physical record stores, I think making sure that you're offering places that you can find your music streaming, shouting out places like Qobuz where people can explore, and also like-minded places, right? Places where it really fits maybe the ethos of where you've had success. But yeah, I think there's definite value in finding audiences across multiple spaces, obviously. And I love to see that, there aren't just say older consumers in record stores. There's younger people who are discovering vinyl, and more, older and different demographics are streaming online.
Thanks so much for that, Sarah. We are coming up to the end of questions. So folks, if you have any other things you'd like to ask today's presenters while we've got time, drop them in the box now. Last one is just about the Qobuz app in general, if you're willing to talk about any updates coming soon to the desktop or mobile app. This person asks because they're moving over from Spotify, is used to and loves the playlist organizing features. Just interested to know if there are any updates coming down the pike that we can talk about today.
Well, I can say, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we did just launch a new Discover page where we offer, a lot more variety, kind of like Spotify, in terms of playlists where, we still, human curation is still our focus, and we offer that, but we're offering a lot more opportunities for personalization to follow along, with artists and releases that come from artists that you're following on Qobuz. What else can I say there? Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if you've been on Qobuz yet and have checked it out, but just recently in the last month, there's a lot more in terms of personalization for playlists available. I don't know, Dan, if you want to add anything on that.
Just that some of the latest updates are only on mobile so far, and they're coming between now and the end of the year on the desktop apps. I hesitate to use the word algorithmic, but we basically added some more algorithmic recommendations because that's what kids are into. So, it's best of both worlds, but the desktop app today is actually a little bit behind the mobile app. So again, catering to those kids and their mobile phones.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Dan, for that. Looks like we are at the end of questions for today's webinar. Just want to again thank everybody who presented today. Really appreciate learning more about how Qobuz fits into the music ecosystem and kind of some of the successes of working with the platform. We really appreciate your time today. And thanks so much, folks, for joining us for this edition of Music Business Common Ground webinar series. Really glad to have you all today, no matter where you're calling in from. For those folks that's early or late at night, we really, really appreciate you being here. Reminder that our next session airs a week from today and will be hosted by Symphonic Distribution. Thanks again for being here, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.